Hey, let's talk about the 10 biggest woodworking myths that you should ignore. If you're thinking about starting in woodworking, there's a lot of chatter online, a lot of myths that I'm here to bust. Let's jump right in with number one. You need a huge wood shop or workspace to get started. Now, the more room, the better. You can never have a big enough shop, as they say. But frankly, it's more about the techniques and the right tools. You can do a lot of great things in such a small space. I started out in basically the equivalent of a single car garage before I moved into a dedicated workshop. You don't need a lot of space. Of course, you may not be able to build an entire house worth of cabinets, but maybe you can even in a small space. Build it in your small space, one cabinet at a time, and then put it in storage somewhere. Get creative with your techniques, utilize wall space, and you'd be surprised what you can do in such a small space. Number two, hand tools are obsolete. Again, not true. There's certainly the right time and place for hand tools, especially in fine furniture making and really small, intricate details. I, like everyone else, have moved primarily to power tools just because they are more efficient and you can kind of batch out things on a production setup. However, here are three tools that I find myself using constantly that are still hand tools. Number one is a flush cut saw or a flush trim saw. I use this all the time because in many instances when I need to use this is the only tool that I have that makes the most sense. Number two is just a chisel. This is probably one of the oldest tools in the book when it comes to hand tools and woodworking, but I find myself using it all the time. Everything from small chisels like this to big chisels, they're still in use and not obsolete. And number three are planes. This is a shoulder plane, but there's also block planes, all different other kinds of planes. You don't see them a whole lot anymore because I, like everyone, have moved to planers and power tools, but these do come in handy for large projects that won't fit through my planer, and even some small details that I need to use like on a shooting board or something with the plane. They're not obsolete. Hand tools are very much still around. Myth number three, you must follow the grain, follow the wood grain. So tell me this, if you're using plywood, do you need to follow the wood grain? Probably not. Especially if the plywood project is getting painted, you don't really care about the wood grain, and plywood is assembled in such a way that the wood grain is opposite with every other layer, so the wood grain really doesn't matter. Another example of this is that if you're using something that's going to get painted and your joinery is set up correctly where you don't have to worry about wood movement, then the wood grain doesn't matter. Again, it's getting covered up with paint. Even if it's not plywood but you're painting it, you may not care about the wood movement. Myth number four, you need expensive tools. Here's the deal. You need the right tools. You need good quality tools. You don't need expensive tools. Buy used, buy older machines. That's the way I got started. And quite frankly, even on the cheaper end, the reason I say this is a myth is because cheaper tools can still be quite nice. Things have come a long way. Not everything is foreign imported just junk. A lot of my tools when I first got started came from Harbor Freight, and I made a lot of money starting out just on those cheaper quality tools. So you do not need expensive tools to get started in woodworking. Good technique using the tools that you have means more than having expensive tools and no technique or bad technique. Practice your technique with cheaper tools. If you mess something up, it's okay, they're cheaper tools. Once you get some time and you're invested into this woodworking thing, then consider moving to a little bit more expensive tools. Myth number five, woodworking is always expensive. Now, this goes hand in hand with the one I just talked about, but there are ways to save money. If you don't have a shop and you don't want to build the shop and you want to save money, use a makerspace or collaborate with another woodworker in your area, or maybe you have a friend that has a garage. You can save some money that way. When it comes to tools, same thing. If you need one specific tool for one specific job, don't go out and buy it. Just rent one or use one from someone you know, or there's online Facebook groups and there's other places that you can do, other methods that you can use besides using that exact tool, other ways that you can save money. If you're looking to upgrade your tools, and I am notorious for this, do not buy them new. Go on Facebook or Craigslist. 99% of everything I own has came off of a marketplace used. Hey, real quick, be sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to grow my content this year and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you. Myth number six is that softwoods are low quality. Some softwoods can be just as strong as hardwoods. An example of this is Douglas fir. Especially when we're talking about softwoods and hardwoods, we're not talking about the density or the durability. We're talking about whether it's a leaf or a needle, long growth trees, short growth trees. So for example, poplar is a hardwood, but it's very lightweight and not as dense as a walnut, of course, but there are softwoods that are of good quality and stronger or as strong as hardwoods. Plus, it depends on the project. There's a time and a place for softwoods. If you're doing farmhouse style furniture and you're going to be making something rustic and kind of weathered, you may not want to use expensive walnut. A lot of farmhouse style furniture is made from construction grade lumber, which is all softwood, spruce, pine, fir, etc. Also, depending on the aesthetics, you may want something like a cedar, which is a softwood. Softwoods can be of good quality, is all I'm trying to say. Myth number 7. Glue isn't strong enough by itself. Absolutely inaccurate. Now, if you're building something major that's going to have a lot of weight, I would absolutely reinforce it with joinery, whether it's mortise and tenon, dowels, bridle joints, any other kind of joinery. However, glue is strong enough by itself for most applications. Long grain to long grain on the wood, not end grain to long grain, but long grain to long grain, a lot of times, 99.9% of the times, the glue will outlast the wood itself. Meaning that if you were to glue a joint together and break that board, the wood fibers themselves in the piece of wood would break before the glue joint would. Glue is super strong and is okay to be used by itself. Myth number 8. More clamps equals a better joint. This is mostly true, but the reason it's a myth is because you can over clamp something. If you glue something and clamp the ever living you know what out of it, you will squeeze all of that glue out of the joint, and then there's nothing left for the joint to hold together. So in that case, the joint is worse than if you didn't use clamps. Clamping pressure is important, but more clamps does not mean a better joint. Myth number 9 is that sawdust is harmless. You would think it's no big deal because it's not a chemical, it's not toxic, it is toxic. Some woods can be toxic. A lot of these exotic hardwoods grown in other parts of the country can be toxic. Think about this, the large chunks of sawdust maybe not be harmless because they're not going to go in through your nostril if it's a large chunk of sawdust. It's the stuff that you can barely see or can't see, the really fine particles of dust. As they enter your body, whether it's sawdust or anything else, it's a foreign object in your lungs. It's not healthy for you. And again, some of these other woods, some exotic hardwoods can be toxic. Be very careful with sawdust. It is harmful. And finally, myth number 10 is that you need decades of experience to be able to sell your work. This goes without saying. You're not selling your years of experience. No one, frankly, has to know that. Provide a good quality product and they will pay you. You don't need to have 10 years of experience before you can start selling something. Start small. You may have 10 years served, but 0 years of experience and be worse than the guy who's just starting out. Put your focus into making the quality product. You will be able to sell your work. That's the 10 biggest myths about woodworking. Thank you for watching. Take care.